this week's episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Diamond is Unbreakable. Josuke and Jotaro are about to go on a hunting trip, and they're not looking for deer, they're not looking for quail or even wild boar. They're looking for some rats. This week's episode of JoJo was just weird, funny, and gross, and completely irrelevant. This is probably my least favorite episode of Diamond is Unbreakable, but it certainly had some highlights and some cool moments. What's really strange about this episode is that we were introduced to another animal that can use stands. Now, we've already seen things like this in the series, such as Pet Shop the Bird, and even the infamous Iggy, the coolest Boston Terrier in the frickin' universe. But in this week's episode, we get to learn that there's a pair of rats which are going around Morio City and turning people into giant melted blobs of flesh. Yes, that's right. So, apparently, Akira Otoshi decided to test out the bow and arrow by shooting some rats, and this gave them the ability to manifest stand powers. And their stand power, ironically, is also called the rat, which takes the form of this small little cannon, which can fire these little darts into people that will turn them into just melted blobs of nothingness so that it can feast on them at its leisure. It's fucked up, and it's weird, but we have to call in the exterminators, so that's going to be Josuke and Jotaro. They don't want any more harm to be done to the town, so this episode right here is basically just watching Jotaro and Josuke walk around and fighting against these rats which have stand powers. But I have to admit that the stands themselves are really interesting, and the fact that they can melt people's bodies is really disturbing, and it features a lot of really messed up imagery in this episode, like when they come across this abandoned house and they find the rat for the very first time, which is feasting on these humans, which are stuck in this fridge, and they're all melted together, and it looks really nasty. Jotaro ends up getting hit by one of these darts, and it causes his hand to start to swell up, and they do these close-up shots where you can see all of this nasty pus just exploding out of his hands. It's freaking sick, man. It's just disgusting. But the biggest part of this episode is that Josuke is learning to use Crazy Diamond in a really interesting way. He's actually able to flick these small bullets and use those and weaponize them in a number of interesting ways. And Jotaro obviously is already an expert at this, but this episode was sort of an excuse to try to get Josuke out of his shell, get him out into nature, and to try to use his stand abilities a little bit more. And predictably, of course, by the end of the episode, through the combination of their stand powers, in particular, Jotaro using his Star Platinum the World abilities to freeze time, they're able to get these rats out of their hiding and take them out and save the day. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Diamond is Unbreakable? Really, I just don't have that much more to say about this episode. It was just Jotaro and Josuke hunting a rat with stand powers for about 20 minutes. And I can understand their plight. I've been playing so much Pokemon Go lately, and I've been seeing so many frickin' Rattata. I want to go out and kill a rat right now. But this was just such a strange episode to include, especially after the end of last week's episode and with all the brand new imagery that we see in the intro. I honestly thought we were going to be jumping into the next arc. No, we're going to be fighting against some frickin' sewer rats. It's just weird. What was really great about this episode is that we finally got one with Josuke and Jotaro hanging out together, and we really got to see how different their personalities really are, with Jotaro definitely being the calm, cool, and collected one, and Josuke having a lot of really funny expressions and really not liking to be out in nature at all. As for the rats themselves, they're not your typical rats. They look a little more monstrous, and the fact that they can use stand powers gives them a little bit more intelligence, but at the end of the day, they're just hunting vermin in this week's episode. And this was just, at the end of the day, just for me personally, kind of an average episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. However, it is still an episode that all fans of JoJo should still at least watch once. And really, that's just my final thoughts on this episode. I'm going to give this one right here a 3 out of 5. Just a fun, average episode of JoJo, but one that's not really going to break the mold, but it certainly does have some creative stuff going for it, and lots of creepy imagery, and some pretty cool action scenes. So check it out, JoJo fans. You might see something you like. But if any of you did watch this week's episode, make sure to tell me what you thought about it in the comment section below, and make sure to tell me what you hope to see from the future arcs of Diamond is Unbreakable. You guys are awesome. Thank you for watching this review. I really appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, follow us on social media, and one of the best ways to help us out is to simply share this video and comment on it and share it with all your buddies. Thank you again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby.